All right, we're recording. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode with Dongsheng News with Tings and Marco. And today's episode is, we're on episode 9, and you are on our show, News on China, Out of This World.
Very good.
So, it ties into our story this time. Those of you joining us for the first time, we always change that last bit of the show name. One day we're going to have to settle on something, but I don't know. It's kind of fun coming up with something on the fly every time.
It's a brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's part of our show personality now. So what we're going to do is we changed the format a little bit last time, where I just briefly talked. Well, it wasn't so briefly last time. I went on for quite a bit. I'll keep it brief this time. I introduced something that I'd just like to talk about in the beginning, something funny or interesting I came across, and then we move into your news, which you release weekly on your channel in a 60-second clip, which is the highlights of the biggest or most interesting news or what caught your attention. And then on our show, we dive deeper into then a select number of those headlines. So what we'll do first is we'll start off with just something fun I came across. This one's a little bit lighter and more funny than last time. You guys know what we're going to talk about.
It was so heavy.
It's so good. Well, last time was heavy, but this time, completely different tone. So I saw that 2 Russian pranksters had got into a private NED call with Carl Gershman. I believe Carl Gershman is still the president of the NED. And they went on for a while. They went on for like half an hour in this private call, and they were like getting information out of them about what kinds of groups they're funding in opposition groups they're funding in Russia, who they're in contact with and stuff like that. And then they started to reveal themselves in more of a prank style. They started saying ridiculous things where all of a sudden these NED guys, they were like, something's not right here. So
I need funding. I need funding for my Gucci shoes. Can you give me funding?
Exactly. Yeah, we got to hear it. We got to hear it firsthand. So the first one is where the prankster, the female prankster, started going a little bit off script. So here we go. I'm going to play that one for you first here.
Yes, I know net is prohibited in Russia now.
Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. We don't have offices. We're not like Freedom House or NDI and IRI. We don't have offices. So if we're not there, they can't kick us out. But we support many groups, and we have a very, very active program throughout the country.
But Leonid has reached you before, right?
Yes.
I mean, Leonid Volkov. So you are in touch with him too?
Yes, of course.
With the trade union leaders, and they promised to give us some people from their factories, but they do need some money. They don't want to protest with no money.
Take your time, Svetlana. Take your time. We understand this is an extraordinarily difficult situation that you're facing, and
I don't know. So we need some money, and how could we arrange it?
We support groups all around the country who are part of this broad movement, and we're obviously responsive to all the groups on the ground that need help. And we have a very active program in Russia, which is really across the country. And so we will, as needs develop, as they go forward with this strategy, we will try to be helpful in whatever way we can.
Mr. President, also I would like to mention that the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Sweden told me that my look is very poor. Was very poor, that my clothes are very poor, and my shoes also, and so I need some money even for good look. I need some money for Gucci brand, because they say that it's very trendy in the United States, or like Louis Vuitton, and that I'm looking like a shit. I'm sorry, and I need some money, and I'm having some meetings with Mr. Blinken. I can't go with that poor look. I'm so sorry.
Yes, I know.
I look like a shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. So this is obviously closer towards the end of the call. And then after this, they started saying like, I think we need to take this into another call. And then this is when the next guy pipes up. So let me play you this next short clip.
Никого не осталось.
I don't know who this is on the
Dear
call.
colleagues,
I don't
dear
know
colleagues.
who this is on the call. I think we need to wrap this up.
Hello.
I agree.
Hello, do you hear me? This is Mayor KGB of Belarus. So, as you know, we have listened to everything that you have said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice
Josh,
before we
will you
ask
wrap
you
this up?
any question. You have the right to have a lawyer with you during questioning. If
Josh,
you
can you
cannot
stop the
afford a
call?
lawyer,
Yeah,
one will be
we'll have to
appointed
end
for
this
you
meeting now.
before
I'm sorry.
any questioning, if you wish.
KGB.
Okay. You have the right to remain silent. I listened to that video like 5 times, 6 times. My wife was like, "How many times are you gonna listen to that?" I said, "I don't know. It's so good."
Just one more.
Yeah. But you know what's remarkable is like, we laugh about it and everybody's just gonna be like, "Oh, those silly Americans." But can you imagine if a Chinese group chat was caught like that? Somebody infiltrated a Chinese group chat saying we're doing all kinds of funding of groups on the ground in America and Australia, countries that are just freaked out by the Confucius Institute teaching Chinese language and culture and stuff like that, with no evidence on this level of them just like, yeah, we're funding opposition groups and stuff like that. Could you imagine? But the thing is like, these pranksters, like, they know if they just did it seriously and then they release this as a serious piece, and they're just like, this is really, really troubling. Look at what America's doing. They're doing all of the things that they're afraid Russia's doing in the US. Like, how is this not, but they know if they do that, nobody's going to care. Everybody's going to be like, yeah, that's just what America does. But then they get freaked out when they hear about, oh my God, maybe another country is doing that to us. So this is the best thing to do, to just humiliate them and make it entertaining. Because at this point, it's like, how do you get people to think about this logically and say, hold on a second, this isn't right. Like, this is all the stuff we're being taught to fear from other countries, and we're doing it ourselves. It's hilarious, but there's a remarkable story behind it also when you really think about it.
I think it's hilarious. You're exactly right, because you can't really expose something that is already out there kind of overtly. One of the things of one of the co-founders of NED, Alan Weinstein, is, famously said back in the early 90s already to Washington Post, it says, a lot of what we do was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. So you can't really expose it in any serious way. This is just how they run. We not just in Eastern Europe or painting color revolutions all over, but we've seen it a lot in China in recent years. And we know, Daniel, you've been covering it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Xinjiang to Hong Kong to just last year, I think it's over 10 million of recorded funding from NED alone into China or anti-China projects within China. So
and this is public.
It's just you go on the NED website and say, okay, how much? $1.2 million spent to smear China reputation internationally, and then 2 million to Hong Kong protests. But it's like decades long project, right? It's not a particularly new thing. So this way of exposing with humor and pranking might be the most effective one.
And it was funny. It was a good piece. But yeah, I guess the most remarkable thing is that they've manipulated the public in the West so much that they don't even bat an eye at this. Like, they don't even think about it. They're like, yeah, we do this stuff. We've overthrown governments before. We know about this now. This is all public and stuff like that. And then at the slightest whiff of saying that we think that another country interfered in our election, they're like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. How could somebody do this to us? How can we retaliate? What can we do to them? Should we sanction them? And there's absolutely zero reflection in society. This is something I've been fascinated by since, shortly after 9/11, because I remember seeing Ron Paul get up on stage during a Republican debate. It was hosted by Fox News. And he was asked the question, do you still support the idea of non-interventionism overseas now that we've been attacked? And he was saying, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, that we were attacked because we're over there, because we've been bombing Iraq for 10 years, because we've been doing this in the Middle East. These are the consequences. CIA teaches about this. It's called blowback. And then Rudy Giuliani said, so then first of all, the host, the Fox host said, are you suggesting we invited these attacks, sir? And then that's when he went into a little bit more detail, saying there's blowback. It happened in Iran when we overthrew their government, also the taking of our hostages in the embassy and stuff like that. Like very, very factual and very well thought out questions. And it shocked me also. It shocked me when I heard that. And I was saying that, why aren't we thinking like this? There is something wrong with our thinking. Because he also said, they're not just coming over here to attack us because we're free and rich. Now, he wasn't trying to, and I'm not trying to excuse any sort of violence at all, but understanding what happened and what led up to it seems like a pretty important thing. And then Rudy Giuliani, who was still considered a hero back then before he went off the deep end with Trump, as he was the mayor of New York when that happened, he said, you know what, may I say something? I said, you know what? I have heard a lot of ridiculous theories about the 9/11 attacks, but to suggest that we had something to do with it in terms of provoking these people is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. And the entire crowd cheered. And I was like, wait, no. Hold on a second. Well, what's going on? We were just about to have a really interesting conversation, a deeper conversation that the media and nobody ever takes this down to. And here we are, so many years later, we're still not able to think critically about, hold on a second, all of the things we think that other countries are doing to us with no evidence, we are absolutely doing. We have the proof of it that we're doing it to others. But we don't. Yeah. We're just so well brainwashed and controlled and content with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that my hope now is that, I mean, this, of course, we know U.S., this is the method of U.S. in the last decades. They do this everywhere. They interfere. They overthrow regimes. They invade countries. We know that. In Latin America, we know that pretty well. But my hope is that now, for the first time, you have, of course, you have Russia doing these accusations since 2014, when what happened in Ukraine. But now we have China. Of course, now China is demonized in the Western, but for us in the global South, have two major powers like China and Russia accusing these kind of things almost every day now. This is, for us, for African countries, for Latin American countries, this is maybe a hope that there are people in the center of the stage, in the Security Council of the United Nations, saying, U.S., you have to stop doing that. You have to stop interfering, invading countries, and overthrowing governments just because you don't agree with them. Because, this must stop one day. This must stop.
Yeah, we spoke about this before, about a lot of global South countries that suffered under the brutality of American foreign policy, seeing what's happening with China's rise and seeing it as a hope that there could be some shift in the world, the way that the world works. Not necessarily for China to take over the world, but at least to add a little bit of balance, exactly. Add a little bit of options. I know we're talking a lot about broader issues, and this is supposed to be news on China, but it definitely ties into China because, then you take it over in terms of suspected human rights abuses, suspected prison labor, suspected all of the things that we know that the U.S. does themselves. They have prison labor through one of the biggest companies is Unicor. They have major human rights abuses.
It's actually part of business.
Yeah. In the White House, they have prison workers, doing the cleaning and the gardening and stuff like that. Their furniture is made by prison workers, for human rights abuses.
An hour. They make 23 cents of dollar an hour.
Yeah, exactly. The human rights, the atrocious human rights abuses that Daniel Hale exposed in Afghanistan, also with their drone programs and beyond. And they sanctioned the ICC, the International Criminal Court, when they want to look into those human rights abuses. So these things like the forced labor in China, where same thing, you get this really weird dynamic where they release a statement from Nike and from H&M saying, we're really concerned about these accusations. But then they leave out the fact that Skechers is the only company that said, okay, we're going to look into this. And they made surprise visits to all of their supply chain in Xinjiang and said, we found no evidence to support this. And it gets completely left out. So there's the really weak non-evidence-based accusations they're making about China are 100% what they are actually doing already. And I mentioned that in the last episode, that what they're inadvertently doing is they're saying, you shouldn't deal with China. We should sanction China. You shouldn't partner with China because we think they're doing all these things. When actually using that logic, saying, well, nobody should deal with the US then, because the things you think they're doing, you're actually doing. It's 100% confirmed already. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, we maybe we'll move this into our China chat now, though. But that was my interesting story, my interesting bit, and some of the thought processes that go behind when I see this happening. So from here, what we'll do is we'll go into your 60-second video, which will show the highlights from the previous week. So if anybody's listening in the non-video podcast format, hang tight for 60 seconds, and we'll be back. And I will start playing that video now. All right, so there we go. That was a great video as usual. And then from here, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the headlines that you're interested in speaking about. So what did you want to talk about first?
Well, first we have to deserve the name of the episode, Out of This World. Let's go far. As you saw in the video, first story, it's amazing. I have to confess this personally, I get very excited about it. So after 7 months of space travel, 319 million kilometers, and 3 months in orbit, China has become the third country in the world to safely land a rover on Mars, and the second country to send data back, because Soviet Union actually landed, but they lost right after.
It failed shortly after. Yeah,
exactly. So last Saturday, the rover Zhurong, is it right?
Great.
Which means the God of Fire, landed in Utopia Planitia in Mars. So this is, of course, the most amazing achievement up to now of the Chinese space program. So the rover Zhurong will collect and send information back to China in the next 3 months. So they might actually stay more, but the program is for 3 months. And remember that this is amazing also operation, because the landing is absolutely automatic. There's no control of human.
What is it? The 12 minutes of terror, or 17?
Exactly, the 9 minutes of terror.
For 9 minutes.
Totally lost control. It's like, I mean, just for half of the missions to Mars so far failed because of that. Mm-hmm. Because like 1 millimeter mistake and everything is over. So that was interesting, because there's still like actually 2 US rovers there. But China actually also did something very interesting, because it was the first time that a mission sent an orbiter, a lander, and a rover in the same mission. That was also a big accomplishment of China.
So this was their first attempt to land on Mars also, right? Or did they
yes, actually they sent one a few years ago, but it failed too. It was with Russia. Actually, it was a partnership with Russia, but they didn't accomplish. So that's really like a big achievement for China. So, but this is actually interesting also for some of the new things they are trying to collect. I mean, besides, of course, all the soil, atmosphere data, the chemistry, the physics, etc. That's going to be the first time ever that they have a way to measure the magnetic field of Mars, because this is one of the things that the scientists is trying to find out, why the atmospheres of Mars got so thinner over the years. Because I mean, that's why Mars is so dry. It's so hard to retain liquid, and the atmosphere is very what is it called? I mean, it's not easy for life to be sustained in Mars because of that. But this is also something that this mission is trying to find out. But again, this was a big accomplishment, but this is one of the many that China has done. As Daniel said last week, the Chinese are home runs. So I don't know, things.
I mean, one of the interesting things, like China's space program is not that old. It's like the 50 years, you know, since the first satellite was launched in 1970. And it's actually a nice story to think back. The first Dongsheng satellite that went with the Long March rocket. But what that kind of meant for the excitement of a nation at the time, probably, I mean, there's a story also at the time when President Xi was still a teenager, and hearing that, like, among all the young people and basically the whole nation, of excitement. I mean, probably as excited as Marco gets when he talks about Mars, but it's part of a young nation. Like, the aspirations of a whole nation is, especially for socialist countries that were pretty underdeveloped. Like, just to give a sense, China was only able to produce its first car in 1956. So to be able to launch a rocket into space with a satellite 14 years later is unimaginable, the kind of national pride. So anyways, that's 50 years ago. Many excited little Marcos at the time.
That's amazing when you put it that way, when you put it into perspective, that, from when they went to being able to manufacture their first car to actually being able to put something into Earth's orbit. Like, that is spectacular. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one day I'll have to send you some of those footage from that time of, it's like a national fervor of what it meant. So anyways, that kind of takes us to the home runs of the recent years. I mean, we've chatted a little bit and we've covered it in Dongsheng News. But the last few years have seen some hit home run after home run on the spatial front. So there was the first quantum satellite launch in 2016. But since then, we've seen kind of many things. In 2018 was the first time actually China became the country that launched more space vessels into space than any other country. Then we talked about the FAST telescope that started in 2018 and then opened just this year to foreign scientists. We had last year the first landing to the dark side of the moon.
2019, actually.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah. Oh my God, what year were we in?
The dark side, popularized as the dark side of the moon, but actually the far side of the moon. But yeah,
realizing Pink Floyd's dream, even though it's actually supposed to technically be called the far side of the moon.
Far side of the moon, yeah.
But
I like dark side of the moon better. I like calling it way more.
Viva Pink Floyd.
And then last year, something we've been following too is the Beidou satellites. They completed a calculation of satellites, which has 56
far more accurate. Also, there was a report I saw just shortly after it launched that the U.S. military actually changed to using those for coordinates, or there was some sort of a story about that because it was accurate by quite a large margin. Yeah, before we get too far away from the story, we're going to continue there in a sec. Before we get too far away from the story of the pride that must have been felt, I just uploaded into my StreamYard here a picture of the most recent launch, which I think is just a beautiful, beautiful image. With everybody there. Like, that is, imagine being able to be in that crowd also. Like, that must have felt spectacular. But
especially because I think he's in Hainan, right? So
yeah. Oh, yeah. The pina coladas aren't far away. Exactly.
I will never live that down. I don't even drink pina coladas. What happened?
Yeah, no, but that's really, really remarkable. And so let me just see the notes here. So you can continue on. Yeah.
Going back to a couple more. I mean, last year again, we heard the lunar samples came back from the first mission, the first country since the U.S. Apollo mission in 1976. So it's been also almost 5 decades that has happened. We have the first launch, just launched this May, earlier or this month, is the China space station. The first part of the space station has been. We have the announcement of the lunar space station with Russia cooperation, which we also talked about.
We'll also talk about
on a show about Russia specifically. And there's some things kind of already projected for the next years, like the first manned mission to the moon is expected for 2030. They're hoping for this, a sample to return from Mars also that same year. So this is incredible achievements. Thinking back, Dongsheng, first satellite, 50 years later, what the achievements have been in the kind of the spatial home runs that we're calling it.
Yeah, I think we need to. Yeah, we probably need to give like a lot of credit to the U.S. for this too, though, because on a number of fronts. I mean, they banned China from the space station to begin with, so they had to do something on their own. And then in terms of the cooperative partnership between Russia to do these amazing projects, it took America attacking both China and Russia so much over these last few years, where they're like, okay, you know what, we really need to stick together. Whatever differences we have over here, obviously we got to stick together because we're being targeted here. So a lot of these accomplishments, these great accomplishments of humanity, we do have to give some credit to the Americans.
I mean, actually, that first rocket we're talking about in 1970, part of it is also during the McCarthyism period. One of the key Chinese American scientists got kicked out, deported from the U.S., and helped build this program to build the first satellite.
Exactly.
History is repeating itself as it does. So thanks to the U.S. again.
Yeah.
So we're going to see another wave of that, as this kind of international sort of like exclusion that has been happening. It means it's going to propel even further the advances that have been made. And it's incredible to think because the budgets of NASA and CNSA is huge difference, $23 billion for NASA, and China only has 10 billion. And it's also because there's also private funding in the space sector. That's also a huge difference. I mean, US has 4.6 billion in private funding for space sector. China has only 300 million. So in both public and private funding, it's eons away, but they've managed to kind of have these successes in the last years is something incredible.
Yeah.
I think the approach of the U.S. is just going to further intensify this stuff. I mean, they're continually shooting themselves in the foot with this. It's the thing that America did much better than China for quite a long time was they were very open, they were very welcoming, and they would accept the best talent from all over the world. It was a very, very open country. And with Trump, first of all, Trump suspending H-1B visas for people coming in, talent coming in, and then obviously with Chinese students feeling less and less welcome in the U.S. and Chinese students make up a huge portion of the STEM fields. And then in Australia, you have actually the McCarthyism in Australia is even worse than the U.S., where you have politicians asking Australian-born Chinese to condemn make sure that they condemn the Chinese Communist Party. It's like it's the most bizarre thing. And Chinese students or anybody who's from China in Australia, if they have any sort of a patriotic element to them about China, about their country, they're attacked. Also, there's one guy named Jeff Wade who goes after them and saying, "Oh, this guy was in this meeting or something like that with this person." So a lot of these people, there's a lot of talented people, especially in the STEM field, as I mentioned, who are just going to be saying, "You know what? Forget it. I'm going to contribute to my own country instead of giving my talent to these countries where I'm not welcome." So I think you're going to see just this snowball from here because these countries are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, also like two important aspects of this issue of the space program of China. First of all, is of course there is an aspect related to defense, military defense. So I mean, especially now, China has to be worried about its defense, and it's very interesting because if you read all the analysis of, made in U.S., there's a lot of articles in New York Times, Washington Post, Financial Times about that, is that China was able to develop a very sophisticated defense system, which is related to the satellites. They call it like the China has a capacity of doing what they call the gray zone actions, which is actually the ability to disable satellites of U.S. or each of the enemy. And one of the things they are able to do, for instance, they are able to create a false GPS signal that blinds the satellite. So the satellite thinks that they are in a place, but they're in another place, and this totally spoofing, exactly. And this totally screw up the capacity of the satellite to sustain communication. So that's actually a very interesting aspect, because again, I think also this has to do a little bit of the Chinese way of behaving in geopolitical issue, is that China is not good in attack. China is good on defense. And
right.
So this is one important aspect. And the second one, as guys were mentioned, has to do with we can call like space internationalism. Because again, China is opening all these initiatives, the FAST, the huge radio telescope, opening for foreigners, the lunar samples that they just got back. It's open for a lot of international foreign scientists also having access to that. The space station that they are starting now to build, they are also opening for other countries to be part of the initiative. Also, the lunar one with Russia, they already announced that they also will accept other countries. So this is exactly the opposite, as you said, as
right.
US in 2011 when they excluded China. And the problem with that is that is like the pandemic. This is a kind of a scientific effort that needs brains for everywhere, for all the countries in the world. And it doesn't work if you isolate a country, if you don't get access to important information. And this is what China is trying to do, is to open also being multilateral in the space program, which is is a good way to deal with that.
Yeah. With the defense side of things, even if we had an unfortunate event where they had to use some of those defense mechanisms, I can tell you now, I can tell you 100%. You guys are probably not going to disagree with me, but it's going to be reframed as that was the provocation. If they end up having to use any of those defense mechanisms, it'll be spun into look at what they're doing. And it's kind of like that Ron Paul thing I was talking about. It's like, oh no, this is totally the fault of the other side. And in many cases it wasn't that. That's a very difficult a thing to compare it to, but with no ability to reflect and say, hold on a second, didn't you do this first? Didn't you attack first, or didn't they have to do this out of defense? But it kind of makes it interesting. A video that I saw after the rover landed on Mars there was somebody who posted a video saying, oh, the first videos are in of the lunar rover on Mars. And then it cut to a clip of BattleBots. I don't know if you ever saw BattleBots, where it was a show where people build these robots and they try to smash each other up. Like they've got these saws and these like drills and stuff, and they fight in this arena. So they were showing they were saying that it's the Chinese rover and the American rover fighting with each other.
It's true. They're gonna meet sometime.
Yeah, that'll be cool if they cross paths and say, "Hey, how you doing?" But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think the important thing too is you guys know I'm really interested in space, and I was a Trekkie growing up and stuff like that. But these are interesting things you're talking about as well in terms of studying the atmosphere and things like that. Because by doing this, we can learn more about our own Earth also. I know a lot of people are a bit more pessimistic about spending so much money on space travel, but a lot of this stuff ends up giving us information where we can learn more about our own planet as well. Exactly. How to protect it, what things to look out for, how to, all this kind of stuff. So very, very valuable information we're going to be able to pull out of this. Yeah.
And it's actually interesting. I can see both of you. I was also a Trekkie, but so talking about space brings like a little childish thing out of all of us.
Totally. Was it TNG? Was it the Next Generation or the original, or which one was it?
Yeah. She's young.
What were you watching?
Next Generation.
Of course, it was on after school every day, and I watched it every day. And then I also watched Voyager because it was on after that. So, but all the way.
all the way. I've watched the entire series. I'm probably on my third time watching it. Voyager was good. But I never really. I wouldn't rewatch it. But TNG.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Really?
TNG I would rewatch, and I don't even know if I should say this on air, but this is my ultimate claim to nerddom. Is at some point I might have like legally changed my middle initial to Q. There's a reason for it, but I had to regularize my name. Maybe
Q was awesome.
My middle name for some time. Just Q, nothing else.
Oh, he was awesome. He's such a good actor too.
Total prankster. He would play that prank on the NED meeting, I would say.
Oh yeah, he would totally be that guy in there, and then put them all on trial, like in the first episodes of you know.
Anyways, we can get into Trekkie a lot, but I mean, one of the things we actually said, we mentioned, I think once in a show, but like you were talking about STEM and, you know, what does this actually fuel? Like the space programs also feel an interest in being scientists and being, you know, studying this area, which fuels the economy and innovation. So, you know, the whole, I think we mentioned it one time, you know, what do most kids in China dream about being when they grow up? When you ask, what do you want to be when you grow up?
This was a survey like a couple of years ago. Yeah,
exactly. Number one in China, astronaut. Number one in US, YouTuber. Not that there's anything wrong with being a YouTuber, Daniel.
You can say it. You can say it. You can say it. You don't have to be afraid. What I'm doing is pathetic. No, no, but no, that is amazing. And you know, actually, the other really good thing about it too is one of the stars of the show is an ethnic minority woman who's on the team. You know, I don't know if you've seen that. Like everybody is so like they're saying this is amazing. Look how young she is. Look at how much she's accomplished. They don't really focus too much on the fact that she's an ethnic minority, but she happens to be an ethnic minority also. And it just shows, I mean, that's such a valuable thing to show society, both from what women can accomplish and what ethnic minorities can accomplish also, if they feel like, you know, if they feel like they're kind of, you know, just a small group or something like that. But they don't really make it as much of, they don't really focus on the ethnic minority part, as far as I've seen so far, as much as maybe you would overseas, saying, oh, look, the first black vice president, or, you know, whatever it is. It's just like when she happens to be an ethnic minority, but they're focusing more on the fact that she accomplished so much at a young age. And I think that's great. And that probably feeds into the fact that so many young Chinese, that's their answer, their number one answer, that they want to be an astronaut, because they have these heroes they can look up to.
So that actually kind of blends into our second story. It's slightly less exciting, but it's a big topic, which is about the census.
Right.
No, it doesn't have the ring like Mars does, but it's the census.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. So, I mean, the census, like many places here, it's every 10 years, and the results came out just recently about the 7th census. And there was a lot of speculation about, you know, that China's already entering negative population growth. But one of the things that came out is that it isn't yet. And the population reached officially 1.412 billion people last year. It's been growing. It grew 5% in the last 10 years. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I think we're going to probably touch on census themes for quite some time. But let's call them, there's some positive outlooks and some challenges that are very clear. I was trying to think about it. It's really cheesy, but maybe the bright side and the dark side of the moon. On the bright side.
Yeah. No, there you go. It is cheesy, but whatever. That's okay. There's
out of
the world episode. So
yeah. So on the bright side,
there's no cheese limit on our show. So go for it.
All right. The first, is actually linked. One of the things is really staggering is looking at how much access and the level of education has improved and the quality of education has improved. So in the census, one thing is China has the largest compulsory education system, by virtue of its population. It's 9 years here, but it's not just the compulsory education level, it's also at the higher education level. So one of the things actually came out from Times Higher Education, one of the main surveyors of the university ranking systems based in the UK. They actually looked at a survey of China's universities and seeing how it's been outperforming pretty much across the board in disciplines. They topped 63 of 89 disciplines, kind of in the higher end. And like you said, a lot in the STEM areas, which is not a particular surprise. So from astronomy, engineering, chemistry, but computer science, so many scientific fields. And so this is a trend that has been happening, is that the society is getting more and more educated, and the level of education is rivaling even like the most Western developed high income economy countries. So that's kind of linking back to thinking about the investment in science and the products of that in terms of something like a space program and the talents that have been cultivated over the last years. So that's the first kind of bright side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the second bright side has to do with urbanization, or the rate of urbanization that has increased in the last 10 years by 14.2%, getting China now to have 63.9% of population in the cities. Compared to the world average, China is higher. World average now is 55.3%. But is still
Much
lower than the so-called high-income countries, which China is about to become in maybe the next couple of years. This country has 81.3% of urban population. So in the last 10 years, 100 million rural migrant workers moved to the city. And of course, this boosted economic growth, because you have more labor supply, more industrialization, and eventually more productivity. But this also brings big challenges for China, as we know, because with the increase of urbanization, you also have much more demands for social services. And so this is now, as we also mentioned here a few weeks ago in the show, which is this big discussion happening right now in China with the reform of the so-called hukou system. For you guys who don't know, I mean, you are in China, you are registered where you were born, and to change this, especially if you are from a rural area, to change this to a registration in a big city, especially like big cities like Shenzhen, like Beijing, Shanghai, is really hard. So like lots of years, there's a system of points you have to accomplish, etc., etc. So the thing is that when you don't
just to add on to that before you continue. So yeah, my very familiar with it. My wife did it, moved it from her hometown in Jiangxi to here. She had to work in Shenzhen. I can't remember how long it was. It was 6 or 7 years. She had a university education, which gave her extra points. At that point, when it was population control was more of an issue. Not having a child or making sure she didn't go over the one child was added points. There were all different elements, but yeah, she had to have enough points, and she did manage to move her hukou to Shenzhen. But yeah, so you're right. You can continue. Yeah.
No, exactly. And if you don't have the hukou, you have hard time to access, for instance, education for your kids, health,
subsidized healthcare.
Yeah. So this is something that, I mean, China is moving this. They are already flexibilizing in some tier 3 and tier 4 cities, but it's still like a long way to go. And the other thing, the last thing, is the issue of taxations of housing. They also start this week. They also started this discussion to put taxes in housing in order
like
to
property tax.
Property taxes, exactly. Yep. Control the prices, because this is another big deal in China, and has to do also with the birth rate, and also the difficulties that people has to stand to back a family in big cities in China. So this is like the urbanization is a bright side, but also brings some challenges to China.
I mean, it's now I'm using the dark side analogy. It's not quite dark side, but it is just a reality that, the declining birth rate is a big question. I mean, it's one of the most talked about issues, the declining birth rate and the aging population. I mean, obviously, to reproduce a society at a consistent rate, you have to, at least have 2.1 children per woman. That's replacement rate. Right now, China's rate and the census is 1.3, so it's significantly lower. There's a tendency also, people are getting married later. Families are choosing not to have or having lesser kids, even after the one-child policy was lifted 5 years ago. No sustained increase in in the birth rate has happened. A good side is that the actual birth ratio, gender ratio at birth has decreased by 6.8. So now it's 111.3 to boys to girls. It's still quite unequal. And also it's unequal when you think about rural and urban. You know, we have quite a lot because of the one-child policy and, you know, the decades of that. You have way more people in the rural areas, especially men who are single, that, you know, having a hard time to find women to get married. And there's a kind of imbalance between urban and countryside, but also in different regions, like the eastern region versus the western region. And that's for a lot of reasons, you know, like real estate prices, expensive schools, life is expensive. We were actually joking, like, wow, Daniel, you and your wife are kind of like the model Chinese family. You have 4 boys. But you know,
I'm responsible for the numbers looking a bit more optimistic.
Exactly.
No, but I mean, it's actually, you know, we don't have kids in China, but we all live in, you know, tier 1 city. We know that it's an expensive place to live. You know, for you guys having a bigger family, it's quite a thing. I mean, even today we were trying to schedule several times our show, because when you have 4 boys, the reality of it means
I'm very, I mean, I can see, I mean, it's very expensive to raise kids in the city also. But yeah, it's difficult to do, unless you have the means to do it. And,
a lot of beer.
A lot of beer. And unfortunately, I mean, as much credit as I want to take for pushing the birth rate up a little bit, I am also very responsible for screwing up the gender imbalance, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't do well on that one. Yeah.
You lost points on that.
I did. Yeah, I lost points. I'm not getting a Shenzhen Hukou anymore. Yeah. No, I mean, you can imagine, though, the most epic poverty alleviation effort the world has ever seen took place in China. And what happens when you remove poverty? What happens when you increase the quality of life? Birth rates go down. It happens everywhere. It happens all over the world. You know, I remember somebody asked Bill Gates once a fairly crude question, which was, if there's a population problem, if the Earth has a population problem, why are you spending so much money to try to save people in third world countries? It's a very insensitive question, but it still is like maybe that question that a reasonable person wouldn't dare to ask. So sometimes it's nice to have somebody to be stupid enough to ask a question like that, because it's, you know, yeah, what is the answer to that? And he said, well, you know, when you go into these communities and you increase their quality of life, you increase their health, you give them education options and stuff like that, it naturally brings the birth rates down. This is what happens. And you can imagine, especially from obviously the cities, the eastern regions in China have been prosperous for a while and have had lower birth rates because of that. When you get out into the outer areas like Guangxi, Jiangxi, Tibet, Xinjiang, Gansu, all of these places, Inner Mongolia, where people were regularly, not too long ago, having like seriously like 7 to 12 kids kind of a range, sometimes even more. That's where you're going to see a really, really sudden drop with these kinds of improvements. So yeah, now it's a matter of getting the balances right, I guess.
And last thing is the issue of aging population. This is also a big challenge that China was going to deal with, because for one side, of course, it's interesting because, I mean, coming from Brazil and here in China, we learn how much elders are respected in the society. There's no comparison. Like Brazil elders, like they don't get the respect that Chinese elders get. But what's happening, actually, this population is also growing. It grew 18.7% in the last decade, and now China has almost 20% of the population above 60. And they will have.
So just to clarify, when you're saying that population grew, that category grew because a lot of people are being now aged into that category.
Exactly.
So there's a big group up there, right?
Exactly, and life expectancy is like many years, like above 70 something. But this, of course, this is becoming also a challenge, because this last year was the first year that China's social insurance funds reported an annual deficit. That was the first time in history, and this will just grow. They think that probably in 10 years from now, the deficit of the pension deficit will reach $1.6 trillion. Just for one comparison, the whole GDP of Brazil last year was $1.4 trillion. So that's the depths of China. It's going to be bigger.
That's for pensions.
Pension that will be bigger than Brazilian GDP, and Brazil is not a small economy.
No,
so that's
yeah.
gonna be a challenge. That's going to be really a big challenge for China.
Yeah. How to make sure people are going to be taken care of in their elderly age, and especially because the family sizes are getting smaller. So now, you know, people are taking care of their kids, but then also the two sets of grandparents on both sides. It's quite a social question that's going to be coming next year.
For sure. You know, we only had 2 topics to talk about, and when I said to you at the beginning of this episode, I think this is going to be a fast one. You laughed at me for good reason, because we never managed to.
I said 54 minutes.
I bet 45. I lost
you
by
owe
far.
me a beer.
Okay. Okay. Right after here.
Yeah, seriously. Well, what we'll end on then is we'll end on something interesting you guys did over the past weekend, right? Do you want to tell everybody? Well, I'll drop a link for it as well. But do you want to tell everybody what it was you did over the weekend? What call did you participate in?
Yeah, sure. That was an event organized by the No Cold War campaign, which is actually a campaign that it's pushing for no Cold War, like the U.S. stop attacking China. Let's live together in peace in the same planet. And also the Tricontinental Institute, which are both our researchers, and Tings is the head of our department as well. So we organized this event. It was China, U.S., and Brazil's quest for independent foreign policy. It was actually, we brought together important leaders like ex-President Dilma Rousseff, the ex-Foreign Minister Relations Celso Amorim, which was one of the architects of the BRICS, plus 2 scholars, Professor Monica Bruckmann, Professor Lia Jabor, plus Professor Wang Wen from Chongyang Institute here from China, and also João Pedro Stedley from the Landless Movement from Brazil. So that was a very interesting debate. It's online. You can watch with the English translation in the No Cold War website. Maybe you can also link here in the description. And we can
also actually link to Mandarin.
Oh yeah, exactly. We also had translation.
To China.
300,000 people in China watched it live. This event it was like a big success here. We were not expecting that much. So yeah, that was the event. And at the end, there was a very funny conversation. I don't know.
Maybe we'll leave the clip for people to get a feel for it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, maybe do you want to set it up with some context? Because are you able to speak about the interesting history of this ex-Brazilian president? What happened to them, and the period of time that they didn't? Actually, you know what? Let me play the clip first. Then we can.
Just one thing for you guys to have the context, because there's a joke. There's an internal Brazilian joke. So President Bolsonaro is fighting against vaccines for months. So a few months ago, he said, and of course, he's very anti-China. So nobody should take the Chinese vaccine. Otherwise, you could become a communist. And then after a few weeks, he said, but if you guys also take the Chinese vaccine, you become an alligator. So that was the kind of bullshit that our president liked to say. So this is just for you to understand some of the jokes that are coming in the video.
Okay, all right. Let's play this.
Tomem Coronavac, que a gente fica assim, cheio de energia. Abraços. Tchau.
Tomem Coronavac e virem jacarés e comunistas.
Essa declaração sua é muito forte, presidente.
Bom, aqui... Opa, perdão, presidente.
Não, eu queria só dizer isso. Tomem Coronavac e virem jacarés e comunistas.
Bom, a gente aqui já tomou vacina. A gente já era comunista, estamos mais ainda, agora estamos virando jacaré.
Não tem problema.
Então, acho
jacaré
que depois...
também é importante, viu, Marco? Sabe por quê? Porque jacaré tem um couro grosso. E para a luta política todas as lutas e todos os tipos, há que ter couro grosso.
Bom, e se tem um povo que tem couro grosso, é o povo chinês. Então, eu acho que depois dessas 6 falas, não precisa, João Pedro, é uma mistura de Jesus com Confúcio, com Marx, com Mao Tse Tung e Xi Jinping.
That's so good. So obviously people listening in the podcast, if they can't see the translation. So, but yeah, so they're joking about becoming alligators, which is very useful to have thick skin in this political environment, and communists, which she seemed to kind of support, which is interesting considering the history and how long she hasn't used language like that. If you want to fill in a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for you guys to know, I mean, Dilma Rousseff, the ex-president, she was a guerrilla. She was a part of the guerrilla organization in late 60s, early 70s in Brazil. It was a period of dictatorship. So some groups took arms, and of course they were smashed by the government. She was arrested for 3 years. She was tortured. It was a terrible story. And later she became a politician again. But I mean, she totally, of course, sort of erased this communist past that she had. And so for our surprise, I mean, she made this joke in the event, and I can tell you that's the first time probably in 50 years that President Dilma Rousseff states she's a communist or suggests people to become a communist. So that was really impressive, and this video is amazing.
I mean, we talk a lot about this. I mean, about what has happened, U.S. intervention in other countries. It's not probably coincidence that after her own experience of being overthrown in a coup backed by the U.S. Just in 2016, that, some years later, there is a kind of also revival of the spirit and saying, okay, we see the reality as it is. When you try to run a government, you might get undermined, and it will be using all the kinds of tactics possible to overthrow your government. So now she's telling us to take vaccines to be alligators and communists. So
that's pretty. You managed to bring it out. And maybe the vaccine is, managed to give you the power to bring that statement out, because you guys also become alligators and communists after taking the shot.
I took my second shot last Monday, so I'm becoming alligator.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's an interesting story to end on too, because it ties into exactly what I was talking about at the beginning about foreign interference and things like that. But yeah, I think so. We'll at least try to get this below the 60 minute mark. So maybe we'll wrap it up here. We'll try to. Yeah, we will. Yeah, come back to Earth, and we'll see what the next episode brings us next week. Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks everyone for joining. See you next time.
See you.